Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to the 6th and final video in our 100,000 subscriber viewer suggested special series. If you haven't seen the other parts in this series, be sure to check out those first. We'll leave links in the description below. With that out of the way, let's get to the video. Like many people her age, in the fall of 2004, 18-year-old Brittany Phillips was busy adjusting to the routines of a new school year. While it was technically her second year of university, it was her first semester at Tulsa Community College in Oklahoma. Brittany had attended Eckerd College in St. Petersburg, Florida the previous year on a full chemistry scholarship, and though she had thrived academically, towards the end of her second semester there, she found it increasingly difficult to be away from her friends and family. Still, it didn't mean that she had given up on her dreams of being a chemist. She had been deeply affected by the death of her grandmother from cancer in her senior year of high school, and she wanted to dedicate her life to becoming a researcher and to finding a cure. Brittany's new plan that fall was to study short-term at Tulsa Community College until she could obtain the transfer credits she needed to attend Oklahoma State University. By the end of September, things were going well. Brittany was enthusiastic about her new classes and had found a good group of friends with whom she could hang out and also study. She managed to find a decent one-bedroom apartment just a short distance from where she had attended high school, meaning she already knew the area well. The rental unit was on the second floor of a 16-unit building called the Glen Eagles Apartments. The building had 8 units on the bottom and 8 on the top, with second-floor apartments like Brittany's each having a balcony. The location of the apartment was also great because it allowed Brittany to regularly visit her mother, Maggie Zingman. Though it was still a 2-hour round trip to her home in Chandler, Brittany made the journey nearly every weekend. During the week, the close mother and daughter also kept in contact by phone. It was strange, therefore, when in the last week of September, Brittany abruptly became unreachable. At the start of that week, on Monday, September 27th, everything had been normal. Aside from suffering from some unusually bad allergies for which she had been unable to see a doctor, all Brittany talked about was life at school. Maggie told Brittany not to worry and that she would book an appointment for her when she came to visit that weekend. Brittany thanked her mother and said that she was heading to an evening class, after which they both said their usual "I love yous" and hung up. However, when Maggie called Brittany the following day, she wasn't able to get a hold of her. She tried again on Wednesday, still not overly concerned, but again received no response. By Thursday, she left a worried message for her, asking for her daughter to please call her back. The week played out similarly for Brittany's friends on campus. They had seen her on September 27th, but she had failed to show up for classes in the following days. Initially, these friends assumed that Brittany was still feeling under the weather from her allergies. However, by the evening of Thursday, September 30th, they were starting to grow seriously concerned. Finally, one of Brittany's friends decided to head over to her apartment. When she arrived, she was surprised to find the door unlocked. Sensing that something was wrong, the friend decided not to go inside, and instead called police to ask them if they would carry out a welfare check on Brittany. When police entered Brittany's apartment around 10 p.m. that night, it wasn't long before everyone's worst fears were confirmed. Her lifeless body was discovered in her room on the floor, with her head lying the opposite direction from her pillows. There were obvious signs of a struggle, and it appeared that Brittany had fought for her life. An autopsy concluded that Brittany had died either from strangulation or suffocation, and that she had also been sexually assaulted. It was determined that she had likely been killed sometime between the night of September 27th and the morning of the 28th, meaning that she had been dead for nearly 3 days before she was found. Back at the crime scene, investigators uncovered what they initially believed was a wealth of forensic evidence. Blood thought to belong to the killer was found underneath Brittany's fingernails, and a tiny amount of semen was reportedly found with her body. However, both of these samples turned out to be too small to generate a usable DNA profile. Thankfully, as investigators continued their search, they found a small amount of blood on the wall leading out of the bedroom that did contain enough genetic material to extract a DNA profile. Even better, a stain on Brittany's bedsheets that was initially thought to be urine was eventually shown to be semen, and was found to be from the same person whose blood was on the wall. Detectives now believed that they had the DNA of Brittany's killer. However, police were less successful in determining how the killer had managed to get into Brittany's apartment. Because there was no sign of forced entry and the door was found unlocked, detectives concluded that it was possible that Brittany had known her attacker and let them in willingly. Her family and friends thought this was extremely unlikely. Brittany was very safety conscious, and on the night she was last seen alive, her mother knew that she planned to go right to bed after her late class and would not have invited any guests over. Investigators came up with 2 other possible entry points for the killer, both of which were chilling to imagine. First, they theorized that if the person was sufficiently tall enough, then they could have climbed up and onto Brittany's second-floor balcony and entered through the glass doors. However, this was seen as unlikely for a couple of reasons. Not only were these doors found locked with no sign of forced entry, but a climb onto any of the second-floor balconies would have been easily noticed by neighbors. When police questioned possible witnesses, no one reported seeing any suspicious activity in the area around the time of the murder. The second possible point of entry had to do with the apartment's attic space. When investigators were searching the crime scene, they noticed that there was a small access door to the building's attic in Brittany's closet. Rather than being confined to a single unit, the attic space was communally open between all 8 units, meaning that anyone with access to one of the units on the second floor could potentially enter any of the others via the attic. It was a disturbing thought, but police were unable to connect anyone with access to the 7 other second-floor apartments to the crime. Believing that a killer that knew Brittany was the most likely scenario, detectives from the Tulsa Police Department began interviewing and testing the DNA of anyone close to her. This started with immediate family, friends, and a boyfriend that Brittany had been seeing at the time, but everyone was ruled out. The same thing happened when police extended the search to people that Brittany knew on campus. A former boyfriend of Brittany's who worked as a security guard and who was obsessive with Brittany and who she had formerly described to her mother as creepy was also reportedly ruled out. This led investigators to broaden their search efforts even further, looking at local sex offenders as well as submitting the DNA they collected to the CODIS database. Neither tactic successfully produced a match. With no DNA matches and leads in the investigation running dry, the Brittany Phillips case began to go cold. Around the first anniversary of Brittany's death, a $5,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of Brittany's killer was offered in hopes that it would help generate new leads that could break the case open. At a press conference, Maggie Zingman pleaded for help from the public, saying that anyone with even the smallest amount of information should reach out to law enforcement. The announcement did prompt more tips from the public, however, none of them led to serious developments in the investigation. A similar thing happened a year later, when Maggie convinced a national advertising company to put up billboards in busy areas of Tulsa with pictures of Brittany and information about the case. The billboard said, quote, "A murderer remains on the streets of Tulsa," and informed anyone with information to call a law enforcement tip line. Once again, calls came in, but none led to a break in the case. On the 3rd anniversary of Brittany's murder in 2007, authorities released new information to the public concerning a light purple pillowcase that had been found at the 2004 crime scene. According to investigators, though only Brittany's DNA had been recovered from the pillowcase, it did not match any of the other linens in her apartment. Because pillowcases are often brought by suspects to carry items during burglaries, detectives theorized that this purple pillowcase could have been brought and left at the scene by Brittany's killer. Officials said they had not previously mentioned the pillowcase because they didn't want the killer to potentially see the information and throw out the rest of the matching linens. However, at this point, they were looking for any new leads they could find. Unfortunately, this announcement also failed to generate any significant developments. Around the same time, growing increasingly frustrated about the lack of progress and national attention that Brittany's case had received, Maggie Zingman decided to take things into her own hands. She had her SUV fully covered in a customized wrap that featured images of Brittany and information about the case, and began to drive cross-country in a campaign that she called the Caravan to Catch a Killer. During the trip, Maggie spoke to whoever would listen about her daughter's murder and generated as much media coverage as she could. Though she could barely support herself, the success of the trip convinced Maggie to continue to embark on these journeys as often as she could, until Brittany's killer was brought to justice. Maggie also began to lobby government representatives in the state of Oklahoma to change the laws concerning law enforcement and the collection of DNA. At the time, Oklahoma was one of a majority of states that did not collect DNA from offenders until after their conviction. But Maggie wanted this to be changed to anyone who was arrested for a handful of serious crimes. She argued that it was especially important to do this in crimes of a sexual nature, where charges are often dropped due to insufficient evidence or because victims are too terrified or ashamed to testify against their assailants. The law would eventually be passed in 2016, thanks in part to Maggie's tireless campaigning. In 2017, after more than 10 years with no breaks in the case, investigators decided to try a different approach. They reached out to a company in Virginia called Parabon Nanolabs that was able to generate a composite sketch using the unknown DNA sample from the crime scene, a technique called DNA phenotyping. The resulting profile showed that the suspected killer was likely a man of Northern European descent, with blue or green eyes and dark blonde or brown hair. The image was circulated widely throughout the media and generated hundreds of new tips for investigators. A year later, following news that Parabon Nanolabs had used a different technique called investigative genetic genealogy to help catch the Golden State Killer, investigators once again contacted the company to see if they could employ the same technique in their case. Investigative genetic genealogy works by analyzing an unknown suspect's DNA profile in combination with large genetic databases like GED-Match, allowing genetic genealogists to construct a family tree. Once some of the unknown person's relatives are established, experts can begin to use this information to uncover their identity. To the surprise of detectives, Parabon Nanolabs was able to find not just the unknown suspect's relatives, but an exact match to the suspect themselves. It seemed that it was only a matter of time before Brittany's case was solved. In a crushing blow, after police interviewed the suspect in 2019, they came to believe that he was not the person they were looking for. It turned out that he had been the boyfriend of one of Brittany's friends in 2004, and Brittany had previously allowed them to sleep in her bed. The man was interrogated, but his story seemed to explain why his DNA was found at the crime scene. Additionally, his DNA was never actually recovered from Brittany's body, so there was nothing concrete linking him to the crime. The man was subsequently released and is no longer considered a suspect. The revelation was not just a major blow to investigators, who concluded that they had spent the last 15 years chasing down the wrong DNA sample, but also to Brittany's mother Maggie, who had been optimistic that the case was finally solved. In an interview, she said that learning that the suspect had been eliminated was as bad as being told that her daughter had been murdered. Heartbreakingly, at the current time, it appears that this is where the investigation stands. Authorities say that they have not given up on the case. However, it looks as though they are now essentially at square one, looking back through all of the old information in the investigation and having to reassess previous persons of interest that they eliminated, as well as anything else that has been potentially overlooked up until now. For her part, Maggie Zingman has continued the caravan to catch a killer. She provides frequent updates through her website, BrittanyPhillipsMurder.net, as well as the Facebook page that she set up for tips about the investigation. As of September 10th, 2021, it appears as if she is on the road once again, marking the 17th anniversary of Brittany's murder. According to Maggie's website, this is the 21st caravan that she has done, and so far, she has traveled 270,000 miles across 48 states. We hope that someday soon, Maggie finally gets the answers that she deserves, and that Brittany's killer is brought to justice once and for all. That brings us to the end of our list. Do you know of any other cases like this that you think we should check out? Tell us about them in the comments section below. As always, if you enjoyed our video, don't forget to like and subscribe to Crime Zone for more true crime content like this, making sure to hit the notification bell to stay up to date with our latest releases. Thank you for watching.